Welcome back to the Mojo Podcast. This week, we look at the mental game in elite sport.
And now people are appreciating how powerful the mental game is, how important it is. Because at the end of the day, certainly in my sport, it's all that matters on the day. And next year at the Olympic Games, there's 17 boats on the start line. It's a really small start line for the Games because only one person per nation gets to compete. I'd say at least 10 of us could win it.
My guest is Adam Burgess, slalom canoeist and on his way to Tokyo to represent TeamGB. In a sport where the margins are so fine, where your course is constantly moving and flowing, and the difference between winning gold and coming 10th could be a matter of seconds, success is as likely to be down to how you set up mentally for a run as your physical preparedness and skill. Adam talks about how he's plugged into a more holistic, mindful set of practices to help him find a greater chance of success. We talk about how he has learned to be incredibly present and literally stay in the flow. How he quietens any doubts in his mind by filling his box, as he calls it, with positive intention. And how he deliberately trains for high pressure situations. As an athlete, naturally, we also talk about dealing with the setbacks of injury and failure. And Adam reveals he's embraced a more holistic approach to living that has allowed him to bounce back faster and better than ever before. He's also an innovator in his sport, bringing experience from other areas of his life to find those margins in the canoe. For Adam, it's what he's learned from yoga and breathwork, of which he's a huge advocate.
It's a moving meditation essentially, and you have to be absolutely in the moment. You can't be evaluating what's going on. You can't be thinking too far ahead. It's one gate at a time. Okay, what is my job right now?
So yes, certainly Adam is a mindful Olympian. We recorded this conversation in December 2020 during a short break in his training for Tokyo. And with all the current uncertainty around the Games, I'm sure Adam's sense of perspective and yogic calm will put him in a good place not to stress the externalities and to focus on what he can control. It's a great conversation. I learned so much about an elite performer's mindset, and there's so much to bring into our daily lives from this. Athlete or not, it's all great advice. So please grab a nice coffee. As you'll hear, Adam is a real coffee aficionado, and enjoy this one. And please remember the Holy Trinity for podcasters. Please subscribe for the new episodes. Please leave a 5-star rating, and please be so kind as to write a short review on Apple Podcasts so even more people can enjoy these Mojo conversations. Okay, over to my chat with Adam Burgess. So welcome back to the Mojo Podcast. I'm delighted to have Adam Burgess join me from Hertfordshire in the UK. Hey Adam, how you doing?
Hey Richard, yeah, really good, thank you. Happy to be here.
Fabulous to have you. And I know you've been no rest of the wicked. You've been training this morning as part of your kind of road to Tokyo 2021. How's that been today?
Yeah, just been this morning, and obviously we've just moved into our tier 4 lockdown here. So
of course,
our usual training venue, the Lee Valley White Water Centre, is closed. So a rare opportunity to get on a real river for a change.
Oh right.
So that was quite nice this morning. But to be honest, I planned on having a bit of a break anyway this year over Christmas. So I'm just keeping things ticking over, staying moving every day. And so yeah, hopefully in the new year when I want to start again, we'll be all good.
Lovely. And so on that basis, a bit of training, I would say a different kind of training in as a real river, not a man-made one. And we'll come on to that, I think, a bit later as well. So yeah. How's the Mojo today out of 10?
Yeah, I was thinking about this before, and I was wondering if it's just 4 because I'm in tier 4. And
4 comes to mind.
Yeah, I'm a bit down. I'm not going to get to see my family this Christmas. Getting ready for a Christmas over various video calls. But I think my spirits are high, and I'll make it work. So I struggle to put numbers on things, but I say I have mojo.
And so when you say it might be a bit low, but you've got mojo. So what does that word mean to you then? What does that essence mean to you?
I think for me, it's about like living in line with your values. And I think when you have an understanding of that, it's probably easy then to have an understanding of what things you can do each day to kind of make you have it and feel good. I think I'm quite self-aware. I think I tend to know, I know if I'm a bit low or like just like low energy and stuff. And I think understand the ways to kind of change that around a little bit, change the mental state almost by changing the physical state sometimes.
Got it.
Yeah.
So that awareness, sense of values, and I'd love to talk about what those are shortly. And I guess this is really what I was really interested in doing this series, particularly about sport and talking to athletes, because I had this sense that you'd be very plugged in to exactly where you are, because physically, obviously you're doing something incredibly strenuous, difficult and skillful, but it's up here as well. It's the mental game too. And keeping those two in connection, is that what's at the root of it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think the more experienced you become, I think the more you realize it kind of pervades into all areas of your life. So whatever's going on, whether it is like this tier 4 lockdown and not seeing my family, for instance, I think I feel like I've gotten over that really quickly. Like almost kind of, should I have been a bit down about that for longer and sat with that? I think, generally I'm quite happy I think it's a technique I've used in sport before, and have this almost like helicopter perspective and just zoom out and kind of, I see perspective as a real massive tool for me anyway, to take the pressure off racing. And it's the same kind of thing really. Like I zoom out and I guess just very quickly understand that, it's going to be okay. And whatever's going on, maybe I do feel a bit down, but it almost goes straight away, because as soon as I know it's temporary and I've got things to look forward to, and at the end of the day, like life will go on, then, I'm quite happy then. And I think it's probably quite difficult sometimes for some people to deal with if they want to see a bit of emotion. And because I think it can come across as a little stoic, really. I think, from training to be mentally tough, it can kind of have that effect on you.
Right. Yeah. So from the outside, you look, I don't know, you're saying you can be a bit detached, but you're not detached. You're just moving these emotions. It sounds like moving very, very quickly, and you're kind of dealing with the information you've got very quickly. Is that fair?
I think so, yeah. I'd see kind of from a mental perspective, I'm training it almost every day to not get dragged away by the emotions. Like I absolutely love my sport, and it's almost the positive ones that are more dangerous for me than kind of negative evaluation. So it's something I do think about a lot, and really try not to follow those thoughts too far.
So tell me about that, sort of not getting too kind of into the positive stuff that's going on. Is this about keeping a balance of some sort?
It's just about staying in the moment, really. Just from as soon as I started to work on that and practice that day to day and training, what that looks like, I learned, for me, it's I find it easier to recover after a mistake. I'm pretty good at putting that behind me. And actually, when I first started doing it, the most difficult thing I found was if something went like unexpectedly well, particularly if it was a real kind of feel good move, you've got the power of the water behind you and you've just flown out of something. And, I love the sport, I love the artistry of it. And in my head, it might just be that split second of like, yeah, that was awesome. And that might just be long enough to have drawn you out, and you pick a penalty on the next skate and your race could be over.
Oh, wow. So it's almost, despite this incredible rush of amazing feeling about something that went, out of 10, that was a 10.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and you train for it, and you deserve that moment to happen. It's like, don't get caught up in it, because the next in your sport, and I'd love to we're going to talk, I think, shortly about, what exactly goes on in canoe slalom and how those decisions are made. But you've got to move on. That gate's done. That's gone. It's not judged anymore. It's all about the next gate.
Yeah. The whole thing, it's like, it's a moving meditation essentially, and you have to be absolutely in the moment. You can't be evaluating what's going on. You can't be thinking too far ahead. It's one gate at a time. Okay, what is my job right now?
A moving meditation. I love that. I mean, in terms of how you can take lessons from sport into life, that is something right there for me. It's what's ahead of you? What is immediately ahead of you? What's the next most important thing I've got to do? For you and what you do right now, it's that gate. And for the rest of us, it could be, I don't know, a meeting, a conversation, a key relationship to work on, right?
And I think I've stolen that phrase from my yoga practice. And when I think about likening anything to meditation, actually, I find it quite interesting, the idea of like non-judgment as well. So day to day, say you're trying to build a habit or something, and it's like it doesn't happen. When it's in meditation, you don't judge, you just get back to it as soon as you can. You just bring it back, and you expect it to happen. You expect to like follow the thoughts a little bit. And I see it as the same kind of thing, that like, there's no judgment. You just pick it up exactly where you left off and carry on.
But that no judgment, that because we all beat ourselves up about stuff. I read somewhere, we have 80,000 thoughts a day. Most of them are negative, right? About ourselves. We all have a level of, what do you call it? The chimp paradox, the monkey on your shoulder, imposter syndrome, all of these things. There's a voice in our head. So I'm really keen to understand while we're in this area. So that voice in your head that is when you're in it and you're being super present, how are you quietening that voice?
A coach I was working with back when I was about 16, he just told me it was this idea of imagining that your mind was like a box, and if you're not filling the box intentionally, then something else is going to do it for you.
Right.
So as long as I've got something to focus on, then I'm going to hopefully prevent anything negative from coming in. Once I've started the run, you're kind of hopefully in a bit of a flow state for as much as the run as possible. It's not always like that. You're kind of balancing on this knife edge of being very conscious, which can make you mechanical, a bit slow to react. But, you might need to be aware of any potential danger going on. And then also that flow state where it is all just automatic. I think the real danger is more in the build-up, the final few minutes before you race. Particularly, big international start lines, lots at stake. You're hearing the commentary. You might have, like, for example, last year, our Olympic selection trials, I was the last to start out of the three of us from Britain, and hearing that one of those boys is already on the podium, and I've got to go and have a run.
Because it's one seat, right? Out of the three of you, is this right? There's only one of you can go.
Only one spot, yeah.
Right. Big stakes.
Yeah, and in that situation, I think I train for that like almost every day. I really put a lot of importance on delivery and training. I feel like I practice those skills probably more often than almost anyone. That I practice the same things. I practice what it's like the few minutes before. So if any of these distracting or negative thoughts do come in, I have little like mantras and things. And the main one that I seem to say to myself is look for the space. So I might hear, on the commentary, so-and-so is an absolute flyer and that's going to be hard to beat. I hear that, and in my mind, it's like, oh, no. And then straight away, look for the space. And it just calms me down. It reminds me of what's important and what I'm going to want to do when I am ultimately performing, is that, when I'm there in the moment and I've got to fill that box, it's look for the space and where am I going next? What's my next important cue?
And so this, you were talking about being on an actual river versus obviously the man-made rivers that you train in. So I just wanted to understand this. And I think I'm going to guess what you're going to say, but although it's man-made, it's still a natural element. It is water that you're in. You talked about flow. So how much preparation can you do? Because I will admit this now, right? I become an armchair canoe fan and therefore expert once every 4 years. That's essentially my exposure, which is a shame. I love it when I watch it. And I guess I watch things like skiing a bit more, another sport with gates. and you see skiers kind of visualizing what's going to happen. And again, that's on a natural element and snow. But are there similarities there between canoe slalom and ski slalom, or is it really, really different? I mean, my question is, I suppose, long-winded. How much planning can you do before you start off and you've got yourself into this state through your mantra?
Yeah, I've never done ski slalom, so it'd be hard for me to comment on that, but I've seen it as well.
Yeah.
It's usually how I describe the sport, to be honest. When people ask me, I say that it's kind of like ski slalom, except our water's not frozen and we have to go uphill. So we have the upstream gates and the downstream gates.
Yes.
Certainly the movement of the water is a huge variable. These artificial courses, we try to make them as consistent as possible, but water is just not like that sometimes. So, the drops and the features, we call them, where the waves tend to come back on themselves, that's, they're generally in the same place and they generally behave the same. You get the odd surge, you get boils in the water. And it's essentially, like, you probably heard the phrase, you can't step in the same river twice because you are not the same man and it is not the same river.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that really sums it up. Like, even if I was doing like a drill, like trying to practice a sequence of 1 or 2 gates, something really simple. We have this debate with my coach sometimes of whether there is actually such thing as a drill in our sport, because it is different every time.
It changes, right?
And it's, you don't know the way you're going to approach the move, how you need to exit the move to set up the next one. There's so many variables in place that, planning is really difficult. And it's something that I'm really interested in at the moment, actually. And whether, we're probably moving into a place where we don't even use the word plan anymore. We're pretty hot on language, because we know the effect that's going to have on the performance in the end. So, like, for example, avoiding any negatives. Don't be too close to that. The brain doesn't understand that. You'd end up being too close to that. Don't hit the ball. So we avoid anything like that. Like, the language is super key, but my coach Craig Morris, his coaching style is kind of, it's really interesting. We both kind of developed along the same time, and from some of the coaching courses and various things that he's been exposed to, his understanding of these like variable environments now is incredible. And we've been on this journey together, really, to get to understand how that works in canoe slalom. And I see it as almost like a pyramid now. So we have the bottom layer is like the foundations, and we learn the course. We don't get to practice on race days. So in the build up to an event, we practice as many different combinations of gates as we can. What we might deem as kind of classic moves, but the course designers on race day are always going to set something we've not seen before.
Oh, and then they move it around before you get a chance to. Oh, I didn't know that. Right. Brutal.
So the blocks, everything that makes the drops and the waves, that all stays the same.
Yeah.
But it's the move. We see it the night before. There's often some demonstration runners, so we get to watch 2 or 3 boats go down first on part. And then we just have to learn what we can from the bank and go from there. So there's an element of planning. So it's kind of, options around, we can call it a spin, where you go through a gate backwards, and it's to essentially take a bit of speed off the boat and make a move easier. Decisions around whether we were going to spin or go direct, whether we take the bow, the front of the boat, under a pole or around a pole, those kind of decisions we try and make first. But then the top layer of the pyramid we always come back to is my visual cues. It's just where I'm looking. That's all I want to think about when I race is where to look. And it's like the negative language, but almost as like a negative thing to look at. If I looked at a pole, then I feel like I'd probably hit it with my boat.
Right.
So I look at the space next to it, where I want the boat to go.
And that must take in that so much training, because you said your mind is attracted to the thing that is what you're kind of aiming at, but you're not aiming at it deliberately.
Yeah.
Resisting that must be so hard.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it happens still, like fairly frequently in the week. When I'm training, I might hit a pole and I'll just sort of, sometimes it's when it's the front of the boat, like directly the tip of the nose hits the pole. It's not you've taken it out from the side or something. In those situations, I know I've looked at it, and I'll just, look at my coach on the bank and we'll sort of have a little laugh. Like, oh, I looked at it, of course.
That's why I hit it.
And it seems easy, and we'll sometimes joke. It's like, just pick a side, any side. You clean that gate. But yeah, no, I that's where most of my attention is these days. Really, my training is trying to create that discipline around that. When I race, I do what I call my eye warm up.
Right.
So I had this kind of, I guess, like a bit of a eureka moment when I was on my yoga mat. It's how we ultimately came to this philosophy of the visual cues for us, and then it was backed by the science, by my psychologist. But she was happy that it landed with me first, and I brought it, so she knew I was going to buy in and really get into this. But yeah, I was on my yoga mat and essentially just realized that in any of the asanas, any pose, there was a correct place to look, whether it was your toes or your thumbs, the sky. And I just clocked, like, I'm not sure if I know where I should be looking at any given moment in a canoe slalom run. And it just got me thinking, I wonder if there is a correct place to look. And we started to kind of go into that. And there was one cue that we were already using, which we were like, that's like, we were cueing it in that way on a place to look. And then we were also like, well, that's the one that we really back ourselves on. My coach would joke that he'd put his mortgage on it. If Adam says he's going bows around that, he's going bows around it. He's going to clean it. So we were like, well, that should be our gold standard. That's how we should do everything. And we set about kind of working out what in yoga, they call them drishtis. So I like to call it the same thing in canoe slalom. Like, where are the drishtis? Is it's next to a gate, it's between the poles, it's the space next to a block, at the end of a wave.
But I love how you brought, I guess this is where, I don't know, improvement, jumps forward come from, when you can bring a skill, a sense, and awareness, you say, from somewhere else into a sport, because that's how sport iterates and develops, or is revolutionized. I think about Dick Frosby and approaching the high jump in a very different way. And it just seems to me that there's that, and also the fact, as your psychologist pointed out, you working that out for yourself, that must have really deep levels of motivation in it, because it's not like, but trust me, Adam, just like, take this, it'll work for you, which might take a bit of belief, but you worked it out for yourself.
Yeah, and I think it's nice to have that, and to kind of come from that more like holistic-y space in my life, to then bring it in and be like, actually no, but here's the science that backs it up as well. And then it really builds the trust in it, which ultimately, like, for me, it's really unnatural for me to be so unplanned when I race. Classically, I'd love to take care of everything. I'd want to know exactly how I was doing stuff. I remember like coming up through the ranks as a youngster, and you'd hear how people, they plan every single stroke. And I think, a bit of that's probably a myth, really. But I've always been a technical paddler. I've always been quite excited by how it can look as well. That I think that's what kind of lended itself to that. And it's, almost no one in the world is going to be good enough to plan exactly how to do everything on the run, because there's always an element of adaptability. And you might have the odd performance, but to be consistent paddling like that week in, week out, it's just so hard. That you're just so fixed. And for me, I guess at times it made me a little mechanical, a bit defensive. I wouldn't really be attacking stuff. And yeah, I mean, it had to change. It was the end of the 2018 season. We had World Championships in Rio, and there was a move, and it was, it got set, and I'd done it in training, and in training I was awful at it. So as soon as I saw that move set, I was just like, oh no, like, what am I going to do?
Getting into the head.
Exactly. And I spent ages kind of just looking at it from the bank. I got off halfway through my warm-up to go and have another look at it, and the view from the outside, from not necessarily my coach but some of the other staff, was just like, Adam looked like he was just like cognitively just exhausted from analyzing it. Wow. And in the moment in the race, the movement on the boat, it was lovely. I absolutely nailed the move, got the pickup on the wave spot on, but didn't have the headspace to just move my arm out the way of the pole, and I took a penalty. 2-second penalty, which is a lot in our sport, and when picked up early in the run as well, that can be quite difficult to deal with. And yeah, like, it knocked me out the final. So we learned a lot from that, and that's, I think, having that negative experience helped me to shift into this new mindset, and trust the new way. And we had the whole winter to build trust, and we purposely set up situations in training where we set moves that would bring about a bit of anxiety if they were set on race day. That look natural, like, there's not a clear, obvious way of doing it.
Yeah.
And I began, I had great success at literally having a quick look and going, okay, well, that's the most important thing. I'll take care of that, and I'll trust my instincts in the moment. And the more it worked in training, the more confident I got. I did it more and more and more. And, the number of times that came up in the Olympic selection series, it's just crazy. And I'd almost laugh at myself sometimes. I remember one particular move at the second round in Prague that got set, and I was like, the old me would have spent ages stood here trying to work out exactly where the nose of the boat was going and what stroke I was going to be on. But the new me, I've had a quick look. I'm just going to take care of that important bit, and I'll just trust that I'll be fine.
Yeah.
And it was.
And that for me, it's so fascinating, because as I admitted to, I'm every 4 years watching your sport, and in my mind it looks uber technical, lots of skill, lots of strength as well, and kind of that's it. And I'm not really thinking about the mindset, the mentality that's needed, but just what you've spoken about there in terms of how you're looking at problems, and you could get literally psyched out by the layout of a course, but instead you're now almost psyching. You are deliberately going, okay, it's fine.
Yeah.
And training for it, and learning to cope with that anxiety.
Yeah.
Because the other thing, and you said, a 2-second penalty can be pretty catastrophic. We're talking about, am I right in saying that often it's about perfection in canoe slalom, that you don't pick up? Does everyone pick up penalties, or?
Yeah. So yeah, you generally need a clean run to win a race. It's not essential. If you are, it's because it is so on the day. It depends on how everyone gets on, and you could have a final where no one really performs, and it's the one who did the least bad. Yeah. It depends how hard the course is and like conditions that day. Yeah, I mean, a 1/10 of a second, was it a 1/10 or? Yeah, maybe a 1/10 or 2/10 slower last year at one race, and I wouldn't be going to Olympic Games. That's how tight it can be. It can be so tight.
Oh my God. I mean, that's nothing. But I suppose in here, you mentioned perspective earlier. I'd love to come back to that in terms of just dealing with the high stakes of it. Because I saw this week kind of there's news about new funding for Olympic sports and the ramifications of that, because you're an elite professional athlete, and to be where you want to get to, which is winning gold at Olympics, you've got to be in this 100%, and therefore you need the funding. But yet, as you say, a 1/10 of a second means you're in or out. I mean, how do you cope with that? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty frightening at times. But as I say, I think perspective has always been the thing for me over the years, that I try and just have that kind of zoomed out view of what's going on here, and regardless of what goes on the river, at the end of the day, like it's just canoeing. We're not saving lives out there or doing anything really that important. It's and I've had some trouble with this in the past, like thinking about it too much, in that it's a selfish ambition, really. And for me, I've had to go through trying to understand actually what it means, and actually then see the influence it can have on people when they see me perform well, and what hopefully people could learn from me, what I can share from the experience. And that kind of thing has got much more important to me kind of after realizing that. And it kind of sits okay with me now. But it's interesting because actually for the Olympic selection year, I know we spoke about this when we chatted before, like I had this vision that I'd won the spot.
Yes.
And this is like 10 months out or so from knowing. It was at the start of that winter training, going into 2019.
Yes, share that, because this is a goosebumps story for me.
Yeah, I still get them when I tell it. I'd been visiting my parents at the end of the season, and just driving back down to London to kick off my winter, and I had to pull over the car because I had this vision of me winning the spot to go to Tokyo, and I was just so overcome by the emotion of it that I was crying, and I had to pull over, and it was exactly what it was like. And what I did was every day after that, I put myself in that place, and I pictured what it was like. And for a while I was trying to just get comfortable with the idea, because I was like, I can't be in these high stakes environments and get emotional like that. I need to be rock solid. So part of it was about being comfortable with it, and part of it was about belief. And not for a second last year did I not believe that I wasn't going to win the spot, which is crazy when you look at the competition that I had to go. Like, it literally could have been any one of the three of us. We all deserve to get the spot. And that's one of the hardest things about it, is that something you've worked so hard for and deserve and wanted more than anything is also what someone else wanted more than anything. And when you achieve your dream, it kind of crushes theirs. And that's tough to deal with. But I was, I wasn't afraid to talk to people about that vision that I had. And out of respect, I wouldn't speak about it with people I was competitive with, but other teammates in different disciplines, and coaches and staff and friends and outside of the sport, I tell them, I'd like, look, I've had this vision, and this is what happened, and I believe it. And for me, it was the look in their eyes when I was telling them that I knew they believed me as well. And it was like, there was one person in particular at my yoga studio, and he was just like, yeah, like, of course, like, it's already happened and you're just living it now. And that for me, it just gave me so much confidence and belief that I think that's probably what got it over the line.
That story, amazing. That we talk a lot about visualization, but this is so much more than that. This is a vision that comes to you. I think as a result of lots of things, partly maybe, I don't know, I'm just picking up on a few things that you said, that you worked out this canoeing lark that you've loved doing since I think the age of like 10 or 12. You were saying to me before, it is important. It does matter. I talked about the funding. If you don't perform to where you want to perform, without putting more pressure on you, there could be the future. And that's a legacy bit. So there's that importance. And I think there's also something you've done, and this is amazing, that you value yourself. And I separate that from, it's not an arrogance thing. It's a belief that I deserve this, that I have value in myself, and therefore that's why this vision comes to me. And it's all bound up with all the hard work and everything you've done for years and years and years. But I think, again, if I'm drawing out lessons here, we can all value ourselves more in whatever we do.
Yeah.
Whatever we do.
Yeah. That and just the power that a bit of belief and just putting it out there into the universe. I think, and I just felt like the more I spoke about it, the more like it was going to happen. And, there's people who probably thought it was a little woo-woo. I think what was great about it was, when I spoke about it with my coach and my support team, they would say, well, this is really cool, but also, we've got this data as well. And yeah, we know that, the season before in 2018 going in, I was probably third boat. I think I was probably like a little bit of the underdog in a way on paper. But then I was like, look, the last 2 or 3 seasons, I've barely had a winter's training because of various injuries.
Right. Okay.
And I just knew, I was like, if I stay fit, I've got this. I've just got to stay fit. I've got to stay in a boat, and that continuity of training, that's what made the difference. So we kind of had a bit of data as well to kind of back it up, which
so they'd seen the improvement. So the vision isn't like Adam's a bit like deluded with this. It is improving. It is improving. And you mentioned injury there, and that's Mojo in the sport. I really want to just talk about that for a second, if it's okay. And how, when you're doing, as you say, what you love, what you're exceptional at, and it gives you an awful lot. It sits well with your values, that defines your identity. When you can't do it, when you're injured, how on earth do you deal with that?
It is hard, because it is, it's a huge part of our identity as athletes. It's the first thing we're thinking about when we wake up. It's getting ready for that training session, and when that's gone, it is tough, really tough, and you just kind of, you got to just knuckle down and get on with it, get on with the rehab, do what the physios tell you. And again, it's that perspective thing. You hopefully that you're going to come back eventually, and you kind of, I guess you have to develop that understanding that you're so much more than just a robot that goes canoeing. There's like other aspects to you. For me, it was I'd make sure I do certain things each day that give me a bit of energy. So if that's to spend a bit of time brewing my coffee in the morning and enjoying that. I play a little bit of music, not very well, but a bit of guitar and piano. So I just try and pick those up each day, read books, things like that, talk to people outside of the sport, friends, about not canoeing. And that really helps, I think. And I think it's about understanding that, we're just so much more than just a list of results.
And what perspective that is that you are a full and complete human. Because again, I think as the armchair fan, I think what we do, we look at people in boats, on bikes, whatever, running, that this is what they do. This is all they are, because so much we don't really know much about, let's say a particularly famous athlete, we don't know much about them apart from this is what they're doing. And I think there's something really human about just understanding, I am exceptional at this, but this does not define me, because I won't be doing it forever. And we'll come on and we'll talk a bit about the future as well towards the end. When you're talking about injury, and you've obviously been through challenges with injury, when we spoke last time, fascinating, we talked about your practice of breath work.
Yes.
And I'd really like to talk about that, because we talked about, this is getting beautifully holistic. We talked about the yoga. There's obviously a lot of meditation you're doing, and meditation for you is, making a coffee. That's meditation.
Yeah, exactly.
You're using the mantra on the start line. But the breath work. Tell me about how that's helping you.
So I got interested in yoga and breath work at the same time. It was back in the start of 2018. I was recovering from a shoulder injury, 2017 even, and one of the physios suggested that I was breathing poorly, out the top of my chest, and just not deep, slow, diaphragmatic breathing. And one thing really struck a chord with me. She just said, you'd be surprised how many elite athletes are really awful breathers. And it's not just athletes, it's everyone really. It's probably another like silent pandemic really that's going on. You know, breath really is like a absolute pillar of health. And you know, if there's one thing that I can hopefully shed a bit of light on in whatever platform I might have for racing the Olympic Games next year, is that people take their breath work seriously. You know, we should all be able to breathe comfortably through our nose. We should be able to breathe silently at rest. We shouldn't be snoring at all. We should be able to keep our mouths closed during the night. And, you know, it affects so many things. And yeah, for me in sport, it was part of my rehab was learning how to breathe again. And the more I got into yoga, the more people I met kind of in that world, the more this interest has kind of turned into like a fascination now. And, you know, there's things that it just goes so deep. Once you go down that rabbit hole with the breath, it is just wild. You know, I'm interested at the moment in learning some more about the, you know, depending on which nostril is dominant at any given moment, depends on which side of the brain is more active. And like so it switches every 90 minutes in line with our circadian rhythms.
Yeah.
I mean, like there's different breathing practices we do in yoga, like alternating nasal breathing, where we close one nostril at a time. It just started to make so much sense to me then of why, you know, certain things in my life. Like I had the worst hay fever, I think, of anyone I knew. Like I once put my back out from sneezing too much. Like it was awful. And, you know, I've taken my breath work really seriously the last couple of years. And I think this year's the first year I've not taken any antihistamine medication. Wow. I feel like I fixed it through breath work because I'm using my nose now almost all of the time, which it's better because it filters the air, it humidifies it, it slows the air down. I can't remember the number. There's some insane, it's like in the thousands, the number of functions that the nose performs when you breathe in.
Right.
And if you're inhaling through the mouth, it just skips all of this. And the key thing is this nitric oxide as well, that's only produced through nasal breathing. And yeah, like, I mean, it's like an involuntary thing. So to correct it, like bad habits,
yes,
it's a long time, and it's hard. And I mean, I tape my mouth shut to go to sleep at night. That's almost the first thing that.
Oh wow.
You've got that for free. That's 9 hours or so
of nasal breathing
overnight. And you know, it is safe. Like you're not sealing the mouth. It's just, you know, a very small amount, just like in the middle of the lips. If anything was to go wrong, you know, you threw up in the night or something, your mouth would open.
Right.
But the nose is a use it or lose it organ, and the more you breathe through the nose, the easier it gets. So the first stage is kind of just 24/7 breathing through your nose, and the night's easy. But during the day, as soon as you're aware of it, maybe just listening to this now, a few times in the day, you'll probably just check in and be like, "Oh, am I breathing through my nose?" And you just get used to it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, just as you say, what a thing that is so unconscious to us, but to become conscious to it. Sounds like to you it's been a game changer in terms of, you know, recovery from injury, you know, getting yourself set. Because I guess you were thinking about very physical, demanding sport. We must be breathing through your mouth quite a lot, I suppose, when you're in competition. But we're not talking about the minute or two you're on the river. We're talking about everything else, which is an awful lot of time.
If you're taking, say, like 20,000 breaths during the day, you know, it's making sure that, you know, 19,000 of them are correct, you know,
through the nose.
Half an hour or so where you're working high intensity, or things like this, like speaking. For me now, I'm probably going to do some breath holds after this, because I think that's partly why in Western cultures we do breathe through our mouths. Is, you know, it's talking too much. It's to do with our diets. Alcohol is another one that can affect it. There's so many things that can kind of trigger that mouth breathing that it's hard to get.
Wow. And I've touched a bit on breath work with some guests before, and you've shone another light in it. And I think I'm going to get someone on at some point just to talk about the miracle that is breath work, so we can learn even more about it. But thank you for that. And so I'm just sort of reflecting, because you're doing all these things that the yoga, the meditation, the breath work, and it's creating success. Is everybody else looking at you going, let's do that? Or are you kind of blazing a trail, kind of doing your own thing? Is the world of canoeing going to follow you?
Really beautiful thing about canoe slalom is that there's no set in stone way of doing it. There's no blueprint at all. You can't start working with a new coach who's had success and follow his method and you're going to win. There's no body type. When I was growing up, the two guys dominating the sport, one's this really tall fella and one's a really short, stocky fella. And at the end of the day, one would win some and one would win the other, and by tenths of seconds. And I think it because of that almost as well, it attracts all kinds of people, different walks of life. And, you say it's a really technical sport, and that's what I love about it as well. But, every now and again you get someone that comes along and is crazy successful and consistent, and you look at it and it's just like, wow, that it's a physical sport. And, they're just a monster, and they're not using the water. They're just boshing it out of the way. Okay. There's just so many ways around it. So, yeah, I think a sport as a whole really is probably, people are looking a bit more holistic now. And, I find it fascinating when I hear people talk about football and actually how kind of old school football is, and it's almost like it's a really modern thing in football to kind of work with a psychologist and stuff, and it can be a bit I hear people talk about it like, well, I wouldn't have done that in my day because it's a sign of weakness really to see a cycle, work on yourself.
Yes.
And now people are appreciating how powerful the mental game is, how important it is, that because at the end of the day, certainly in my sport, it's all that matters on the day. And next year at the Olympic Games, there's 17 boats on the start line. It's a really small start line for the games because only one person per nation gets to compete. I'd say at least 10 of us could win it.
Wow.
And it's all about what happens on the day. And it's, I go training, half my time is getting better at canoeing, and I'd see as half the time is getting better at racing. And the improving it in both of those areas, I guess you can never guarantee a medal, but I'm just increasing my chances every time. And you can probably, at best you could hope for, you could maybe make it 8 or 9 out of 10. You can never be a 10. You can never be a sure thing in canoe slalom.
Yeah. So I say all those factors, and the fact your pitch moves and you don't know exactly where it's going to move. I love the perspective of that. Adam, so thinking slightly further forward then, in terms of life, I'm not going to say after sport, but maybe after a few more Olympics and lots of success, what does the future hold? Where's your ambition lie?
I'm at an age now, I'm 28. I've got to start thinking about this kind of thing. Hopefully my body's going to hold out at least for one more Olympic cycle, potentially 2 more. So that would be 2028. We'll see how the shoulders and my spine's doing by then. I think, I don't like the idea of stopping. I think I prefer to think of it as kind of transitioning and understanding what's important to me now. I'd like to think will still be important to me, and I just find a new outlet for that. I just get to share that in a different way. At the moment, I'm kind of fascinated by a lot of the links between sport and business, and maybe what the business world could learn from elite sport. I know there's quite a bit of that going on at the moment already. I think it could be a good thing to get into. It could be something I can start alongside my sport. So yeah, I think somewhere in that kind of realm, and maybe in the wellness industry. As I said already, I'm really interested in breath and sleep as well, diet, these kind of things. I think I've probably got quite a lot to share. And I just can't see myself having a job where I'm doing the same thing every day though. I love being around people and new experiences and things. I think I'd like to be, visiting different places. And
there we are. And you mentioned your values right at the beginning. I dare say that experience and variety probably sit quite important for you in terms of your values.
That and like curiosity, I say as well, is probably my most important. Like, I'd like to think, you know, I mean, hopefully I live to a good old age, but I want to be learning all the time. I'd want new challenges, and you know, I kind of joke with a pal that, you know, when I'm 80, I'll probably pick up an accordion and start learning that, and just something like that.
Why not? You've got that exactly. You've got that curious mindset clearly by you bringing these practices in to do the thing that you do, but to a higher level. Which, you know, there's so much in that we can all learn from. So thanks for sharing that. Just quickly as we get towards the end, and you talked about a lot of your practices. Are there sort of some things that you do every day that, like, for your mojo, I need this?
Yeah. So cold shower.
A bit of Wim Hof.
Yeah. When I can't get in an ice bath or cold lake, cold shower. Good specialty coffee. I am a bit of a connoisseur. and just to move every day. You know, even on a rest day, I've got to get up and do something. Even just a walk.
Brilliant. I love that, you know, having that very, very clear sense of these are the things I've just got to do, non-negotiable, got to get these done, so you can work it into your day. Adam Burgess, well, thank you so much for joining the Mojo podcast today. And I just want to say, on behalf of myself and all the listeners, good luck on the road to Tokyo 2021. And I'll be, you know, I always support the GB athletes, but mate, I'm going to be so vocal when you're in that boat.
Just watch out for it. Watch for the eyes, and you'll know as well. If you see my mouth moving on the start line, you'll probably know what I'm saying. I'll be the other commentator. He's doing a mantra right now, and look at his eyes. He's not looking at the gates. How to impress your friends. Yeah. Brilliant, Adam. Thank you so much for joining us today. Awesome, cool. Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
There you go, my fanboy tendencies getting me carried away at the end. I really am that armchair fan at the Olympics though, and after speaking to Adam, I'm even more in awe of the canoeing events especially. There's so much going on and so much you can't predict that's going to happen on the day. So Adam's approach seems spot on to take the angst out of that uncertainty. I love how he's found transferable skills from his yoga and his meditation and applied them to his sport. It takes a very curious mind to do that. And I'm fascinated by his breathwork experience. As he says, the nose is a use it or lose it organ. There are plenty of great breathwork coaches out there actually. I've done a few sessions myself and it is excellent. So maybe give it a go and see what it does for you. And I love how he talks about his values as his guide. More and more people are realizing the importance of understanding their own values. Something I do with all my new coaching clients. It's powerful and super helpful, even here in the world of elite sport. Now, I've got a very special guest for you next time out in 2 weeks, so be sure to subscribe to get the notification for that one, and check out my Instagram @MojoRichard for more details. And please do leave that 5-star rating and a short review on Apple Podcasts. Until next time, I hope your mojo continues to flow.